Taiwan is bursting with heaps of fun places to explore. Join me, Amber Hatfield, as I hit up travel hotspots, soak up some culture, and hunt down hidden gems. Let's go! Hello and welcome back to Let's Go. I'm your host, Amber Hatfield, and today I'm very excited to be hosting Andre Carrillo. He is a Filipino-American from California who has called Taiwan his home for the past 6 years or so. He has more than 86,000 Instagram followers and 265,000 followers on TikTok. Andre shares his adventures exploring Taiwan's landscapes and culture while teaching English and creating lots of awesome travel content. Thank you so much for joining me today, Andre. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to become a travel content creator on Instagram and on TikTok?
My name is Andre, and I've been living in Taiwan for 6 years, but I only started doing the content creation work, per se, since the beginning of COVID, actually. I originally started on TikTok, and I remember that was at a period of time where COVID first came to Taiwan, and then work was called off for 2 weeks. But that was like right after our winter break, so I already had a lot of time off where I spent a lot of money traveling, and then I came back to Taiwan to an extra 2 weeks where I thought, okay, well, I can't keep spending so much money going out. What should I do to keep myself preoccupied? So originally I was kind of just doing like the trends on TikTok, but doing them in my broken Chinese, which I thought was a really fun way to learn Chinese at the same time, because then I get feedback from Taiwanese people. Yeah. But I transitioned to doing travel content, I would say just at the beginning of last year. Because I wanted to start thinking of ways to actually make it monetizable.
Okay.
And see if I can come to a point where I can even do it full time. At that time, like maybe a year ago, I was thinking about like the YouTubers that I used to watch when I was in high school, and like they were like travel type content creators. And I really liked how like they made their videos, and I actually remember in high school I always wanted to like be like them, and I even made like travel vlogs that will never be public to this day because they're very embarrassing now. But then I thought, okay, I have like a little bit experience on how that works already, so maybe I can try it out. And my Instagram actually was always just a more personal Instagram where I only posted travel photos to begin with.
Right.
And so I started posting the travel type content on Instagram. And so I think that worked out really well because it already kind of matched what I had already been posting on Instagram. But if you did see my videos from 2020, that's not me. A little embarrassing. Yeah, we can forget about those videos.
But you keep them up there, though. You're not gonna
I did private of some of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about what travel means to you personally and kind of how it's shaped your perspective on life.
I think travel has, I don't know, I don't want to sound cliche per se, but it really has, quote unquote, opened my eyes to the world. I don't know, I feel like you can learn so much about the world and can learn so much from other people by stepping out from like where you grew up. Of course, you can learn a lot of things in your own environment per se, but it's different from placing yourself in a completely different one. Coming to Taiwan wasn't like my only out of the US experience. Prior to this, I actually had a few summer internships through my university in South American countries, and I even studied abroad in Ecuador. And I think my time in Latin America was what really inspired me to want to move overseas, because I don't know, I just felt like I was meeting a lot of locals in these countries and speaking with them, and I don't know, something in my heart just made me feel like, wow, like our lives are so different.
Yeah.
Are just so vastly different, and I can't comprehend how it's possible for everyone to have their own different lives. But I'm intrigued, and I'm very interested in to learn more about like how was it growing up where you grew up? How did that shape your own like personal perspective on these topics or just random things in general? And so I think it's just through those conversations with a lot of people I met in previous countries before I came to Taiwan. Those conversations were what inspired me to want to, after graduating from university, to move overseas full time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt like, well, I guess I'm young.
Yeah.
I might as well take advantage of the ability to move while I can,
Uh-huh.
and just to learn a lot more. And actually, coming to Taiwan was my first time in Asia.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, I actually come from an Asian background.
Uh-huh.
I'm ethnically Filipino.
Uh-huh.
And which sounds funny then. It's like, well, why didn't I move to the Philippines? Well, because there was work opportunities I found in Taiwan.
Right.
And I thought at least that's a good start. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Taiwan loves to call themselves the heart of Asia. So
Uh-huh,
I thought,
uh-huh.
we can go and
I mean, you can
check
get to
it
the
out.
Philippines easily from
Yeah,
here. So,
yeah, so easy. Yeah, it's perfect. So yeah, I just came to Taiwan and I just felt like being here as well is also just so vastly different from the countries I've been to in South America. And I don't know, I think it's just more and more just being in a different environment from where I grew up. I feel like it really allows me to be more open-minded
Yeah.
per se, and also less and less surprised when I meet someone who might have a different perspective about something than I do.
I want to touch a little bit on, you just mentioned about things being different and kind of like culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if there was anything when you first came to Taiwan that kind of really stood out to you, or kind of like was a culture shock type thing that you noticed.
Yeah, I think actually there was a lot.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, it was my first time in Asia, which when I think about it, it's kind of crazy that my first time in Asia, it wasn't just visiting, it was moving here. That's kind of wild that I decided to do that. I think the biggest thing that shocked me, which has nothing to do with the culture actually, it was the weather.
Okay.
Because I moved in the middle of July.
Mhm.
I moved
Oh,
in
wow.
July of 2018, and coming from California where it's dry, I felt like I was suffocating.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even till this day, 6 years later, I go outside, I still feel like I'm in a sauna. Like I am
Yeah.
not used to this.
Uh-huh.
But that was like the biggest thing that really shocked me. But regarding culture per se, I think the hardest thing that was, or the thing that was the hardest for me to, I guess, get used to was the language.
Mm.
I partly wanted to come to Taiwan to learn Mandarin, but at that time I did not know anything except for like, oh, ni hao, wo yao, zega.
Yeah.
And so because I had no prior experience learning Mandarin, I felt like that kind of shaped my impression of Taiwan kind of in a bad way, which I do take responsibility for, in the sense of I was kind of judging things based off what I didn't know in Chinese. For example, this is like maybe oddly specific, but in Chinese, when you're ordering food or you go to a restaurant, it's very direct in Chinese, 你要什么, which just directly translates to, if you did directly translate it to, what do you want? And from an English-speaking environment, and I'm translating in my mind in English to what do you want, I assumed that everyone was so rude. Or I thought, why? Like, no one's asking, how are you? Or what would you like? There's no way to say what would you like in
Yeah.
Chinese. Of course, when I started learning and I had a Chinese tutor who was like helping me out, then I started to realize like, oh, that's just how it works. Like, and they're not being rude. It's just like the language itself. I even had a problem with ordering. I felt like I was being rude because I was like, you really just say 我要? Like, I want
this.
Yeah.
Give it to me now.
Yeah, I remember asking people, I was like, is there not a nicer way? So that was like one thing that was kind of shocking as well. So that has to do with like culture and language.
Uh-huh.
And other things as well that was kind of hard for me to get used to as well is, one, it's a new environment to me, but me as a foreigner in a place that's mostly monocultural. I guess you can say Taiwan is, I mean, it's mostly just Taiwanese culture, or like Huaren, just like, Chinese culture per se. It's not as, I guess, international as maybe other East Asian countries. And I've had conversations, even to this day, I still have conversations with people that maybe back then when I first came that I would consider as these are inappropriate conversations to have. But now I realize it's just maybe people being curious. For example, in the beginning, when I first came here, of course, most Taiwanese people love to ask foreigners, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? But in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, they're asking where I'm from, and I was born and raised in the States, so I will tell people, oh, I'm from the States. But in Chinese, like 我是美国人. And I remember getting so many reactions. And again, I still get it in the beginning of like, oh, really? Like, oh, but you don't look...
like an American.
Yeah, you don't look like American.
Yeah.
And again, in the beginning, because if I got that comment in the States, that would come off as incredibly racist or like, why? What do you mean? What does that mean? I don't look. What does that mean? You know?
Yeah.
So of course, not having any experience in Taiwan or Asia for that matter, and then hearing these comments again, I thought people were being so rude. I'm like, why would you say that? Like, I don't even hear people say that where I'm from in California. Like, that is so rude. Why would you say stuff like that? But then, of course, the more I learned Chinese and the more I learned Chinese, the more I was actually able to have deeper conversations with people where they would be able to say, oh, they just really did not know. And so it's like, okay, like you're not like trying to be rude about it. You simply didn't know. Like I remember actually I had a conversation with one of the Taiwanese teachers at my school, and she was like, oh, like can you like explain like how are you like American? You know, like, well, if you're born and raised, you know, in this state, or if you're born there, you're automatically like by citizenship American. And where I grew up is very diverse. We have all different types of people, not just like what you see on TV. And she like really was like, oh, wow, I really did not know. She literally said, I only thought America had black and white people. Like I didn't know they had other types of people. I'm like, yes, it's actually, you know, a lot more diverse than you might see, you know, or think about when you think of the States.
I watched some of your videos that are about different things in Taiwan that you're still not used to.
Yeah.
Which I thought were funny because I agreed with like quite a lot of them. So in one of them, you were talking about how people don't introduce someone necessarily in a group setting, which I thought is like an interesting kind of cultural difference in Taiwan, especially because when I'm in England, it's also the same that if you bring someone into a group, they will
kind of introduce them to everybody, like, oh, hey, by the way, this is Stacy.
Yeah. So I thought that's an also kind of a funny difference. I enjoyed those videos that you make. I think they're good.
Thank you.
I want to move to talk a little bit about like some travel aspects. So you've also made some videos about different hidden gems that you've found in Taiwan, like Dashuishan Forest and like Sunlink Sea. Could you chat a little bit about a couple of those places and just like what you like about them or about them a little bit?
Okay. I really love hiking or just the outdoors in general. And so I spend a lot of time on Instagram trying to find places that are a little bit different from just the outdoors around Taipei. And that's how I was able to find places like Dashuishan or like Sunling Sea. And I really like these places, not only because they are like in the outdoors per se, but they kind of feel, I personally call them hidden gems because they're just not as crowded or maybe touristy or not many people know about them. But I feel like they really should. I mean, I guess that's the definition of a hidden gem. I feel like when there's a hidden gem in Taiwan, since Taiwan is already not that touristy in comparison to like its East Asian counterparts, these hidden gems really, really feel like, wow, I am the only one here. I am one with nature because there's no one else around. There will be some like tour groups of like hiking groups or whatever. And actually the times that I had been to these places, like Sunling Sea was like on a weekday and the only people there were maybe like old people who are retired, you know?
Yeah,
you know, they're just like, you know, enjoying their life to the fullest. But other than them, you know, it's just like me. And then, so I just feel like, wow, I like these places because one, they're like nature spots. And then two, there's nobody else around. And it kind of reminds me of nature spots that I have gone to back in the States because, I mean, the States is so big and like our national parks are huge. So you have the ability to be in these national parks, the ability to like be on a trail and there's no one else there, you know, and it just feels like I am in nature, you know, I am one with nature. And so places like Dashuishan and Sunlink Sea or Awanta is another national forest I've been to that not many people know about. It just kind of reminds me of those times when I was growing up in California and going to different national parks. Taiwan is super, super small. I think you can fit like 13 Taiwans in California. And so I feel like it is actually hard to feel like you're in a very grand, huge area, like open space where there's nobody around. Whereas like in the States, I can like be somewhere and like for miles and miles, you just see like trees and stuff like that, mountains, and nobody else around. And so when I have that ability or have that chance to kind of experience something like that in Taiwan, where I'm like on a mountain or in a forest, and it's like, oh, I don't see any city, any people, nothing but me and the trees. Yeah, that's why I like those places.
And what are some of your favorite hikes that you might have done in Taiwan? Have you done any overnight hike?
Yeah, I did Jade Mountain.
Okay.
Although I do want to do it again because when I went, it was just cloudy.
Okay.
And not cloudy, I mean like we were in fog. So at the top, it was just all white background.
Oh.
I mean, we took a picture with the rock at the summit to prove that we made it. But other than that, we had no views. Like, oh, did we really go? My body can feel it, but my eyes cannot. But for other hikes, maybe just like day trips. This one's not really a hidden gem per se, but Teapot Mountain is my number one favorite hike, and that's by Joe Fun. I really like it because it's right by the ocean, and I feel like the views are very dramatic, poetic. I don't know. It's just like you can see like cliffs and like going directly into the ocean. I think it's very pretty. It kind of reminds me of Hawaii on sunny days.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really, really pretty. And it's also not that difficult of a hike. Honestly, from the starting point to the top will take you less than an hour or even maybe 40-30 minutes, depending on how fast you go. And you're already rewarded with like really good views, even from just the trailhead. And so that's my favorite hike to do in Taiwan. I really also liked Xitou, which is in Nantou. It's very pretty there, and I think the park is very easy to like get around in that forest. And they have like this really cool treetop bridge, which just makes me feel like, I don't know, I'm in Twilight or something.
Yeah.
So I really like that park. It's not much of a hike per se, but being in I consider it kind of like a hike, I guess, like an easy one.
Yeah, being in nature.
Yeah.
I actually went there a couple of times. The first time I went there, it was during the firefly season, and like outside of there in the car park area, there's lots of fireflies at nighttime during the firefly season. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's so cool.
But that place is you do see a lot of older people doing their morning hike or their exercise there, but it does feel really naturey, like you're really surrounded by all the forest and the trees, so it's quite relaxing. Yeah. That's about all we've got time for today's episode of Let's Go. Thank you to Andre for joining me, and we will have Andre back on next week's show as we will continue our chat. So I look forward to seeing you on next week's episode.